السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Today we're joined by Tariq from Inshallah for a podcast about crypto, Inshallah, and more. Tariq, it's a pleasure to have you on.
It's great to be here. Jazakallah khair. Thank you for having me.
Jazakumullah khairan. Um, let's jump in right away, So before,
Bismillah.
this week, there's a lot of talk about crypto, global politics is getting so engaged. Tell us about why you created Inshallah as a platform.
Okay. All right. Diving right into it. So inshallah, crypto, let's start with crypto, right? And I can start at a very high level. Crypto is, I think, a generational technological shift. And it's actually more than technology. It's a financial shift. And it's going to change the way that finance works as a whole. And it's already quite massive. People think crypto is this niche thing and, like there's stocks and there's crypto, but crypto is already $4 or $5 trillion economy. And I'm fairly sure Muslims are holding more than $1 trillion in that 4 to 5 trillion, because you have, or at least a few hundred billion. You have Abu Dhabi that announced recently that they have themselves 400 million of Bitcoin alone, and they didn't announce anything else.
Oh, wow.
So Muslims have a lot of crypto, but they are not at the cutting edge of defining this new financial technology. And the last time that happened, if you look at the last time Muslims didn't define what happens with financial technology, that was maybe 400 years ago, with the rise of companies, the East India Tea Company, all these companies, and that happened all over the world. Shareholders, modern finance, Wall Street. And then what happened was about 40, 50 years ago, for a long time, Muslims were saying that's haram, that's haram, that's haram. We can't engage in it. I'm not saying all Muslims, but a vast majority of them. Until 50 years ago, 60 years ago, at maximum, they said, you know what? We live in this world now, and we're forced to deal with this world. And now, out of darura, we're going to go use fiat money. Out of darura, we're going to go set up a bank. And it just became so normalized. Now,
Darura is
today,
a necessity, right?
necessity, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So out of necessity, we're going to basically engage in interest. And Muslims were doing it anyway, but out of necessity, we're going to do it. And the scholars said, out of necessity, we're going to try to minimize it. Many of the things that we're going to use are still not 100% halal, but we're going to try to minimize the haram. And today we're stuck in a system where riba is completely normalized. And there's a hadith that the dust of the riba is upon us. And so we don't want the same to happen in crypto. That's the goal of Inshallah. We want Muslims to be at the cutting edge and defining the cutting edge of the next financial revolution.
MashaAllah. Before we get into Inshallah as a platform, when you talk about the financial sector, it's such a fundamental building block of society. And I remember in 2025, so 3 years ago, I remember or 2 years ago when the FTX collapsed and Ethereum was big amongst my friends. I was like, man, like it's such a alternative to modern finance. And it's such a, when you look at startup ideas, the TAM for that is like, infinite, right? Because it's the
Yes.
building blocks. And
Yes.
it's very sensitive, right? Like a lot of power in play. Before, we go into the Inshallah as a platform, tell me your mindset about going into crypto. Like, why is it not so necessary to change? And for example, the possibility of doing it. So I know a lot of people, they know it, like the riba is huge, but they may feel, hopeless, like you can't do it. It's just that it governs us.
Yeah. So basically, you're saying like, what is it about crypto that can help in this fight against riba?
Right.
So I think to understand that, we have to look at like what attempts the Muslims have had to fight against riba. And the first attempt was just saying that it's haram, but of course that didn't work, right? Because while the scholars said that, the lay people were going out and doing it anyway just to make money and make their everyday living. You could say another big attempt was to try to go back to the gold standard. So there was a movement, the Murabitun movement, maybe you've heard of it, and they are probably the most successful attempt to try to go back to the gold standard. They even got a state in Malaysia, I believe, to attempt to mint a gold coin.
Oh wow!
And the state actually minted it. However, from what I remember, it wasn't even accepted by the federal government of Malaysia. And so that was kind of the end of the journey. But that was the closest thing to leaving riba. Now, why do Muslims feel hopeless? It's because any attempt by Muslims alone to try to overcome the riba system doesn't work. Because in the global financial trade commerce system that we live in, we're not just trading with Muslims. I'm currently not in America, but I grew up in America. We live in a non-Muslim country. Many Muslims live in a non-Muslim country. Even if you live in a Muslim country, look where your made-in brands are coming from. They're made in China, made in Spain, made in Thailand. You're not just trading with Muslims. So you can't just say, I'm going to create a system for Muslims that gets rid of riba. So now you need to create a system that's bigger than just Muslims. That's a huge feat. And the only system that's gotten traction, that's an alternative financial system that's gotten traction, that's bigger than just Muslims, so far in the past 300 years, is crypto. And that's why it's massive. It's the only system that's being accepted by non-Muslims. And the fundamental basis of crypto, if you go back and read Bitcoin, the white paper, if you go back and read Satoshi's posts on different forums, the fundamental basis of crypto aligns with Muslim ethical values. Like, forget all the stuff that's going on around it. Yeah, there's scams and meme coins, and that's what people get caught up in. Right. But you got to go back to the usul, right?
Right.
It's just like when it comes to Islam, you got to go back to the roots. Yeah, Muslims are doing a lot of bad things, There's Muslims drinking, there's Muslims doing khamr, there's Muslims stealing. But what does Islam actually say? And so that's the same thing with crypto. There's a lot of crypto people doing scams and meme coins, but what does the usul of crypto, the fundamental roots of crypto say? It's fighting against government manipulation, fighting against banks that control the monetary system. And so now you have a system that aligns at its fundamental roots with the Islamic perspective on modern finance. And it's the only system in the past 300 years that's gotten traction as an alternative financial system. So I hope that clarifies why now it's kind of obvious that Muslims should be trying to use the system to push out riba, try to ride this wave to push out riba.
Yeah, I there's no doubt that it's a necessity. I think a lot of the things that a layman or people who heard of crypto very briefly they state is first, they question the permissibility because maybe their local scholar said it's haram, even though we can talk about that. And the other thing is basically user adoption, right? There's not a lot of people see it as complicated, right? Not everybody is like a 16-year-old person doing meme coins, even though that's something completely different. But like your local person in the masjid, they don't really know about this. I think how can we make user adoption easier in terms of Muslim communities?
Yeah, I think that's one of our focuses. That's one of our focuses is how do we bring this to Muslims and help them understand. And I think crypto overall is actually moving in that direction.
Okay.
where it's becoming very obvious, the use cases of crypto. And oftentimes it is uh, it is hidden. You don't even notice it. So I'll give you a few examples. The biggest example is stablecoins. So, when I was paying my rent here in Cairo,
Hmm.
it took, I wanted to pay it in dollars. And it was actually an American real estate company that has a branch here that's managing this house. So I was like, okay, first option, let me just pay your American account. They said, no, that's regulation now. We can't do that. I was like, okay, let me pay your Egyptian account in dollars. They said, no, it has to be in like Guinea, whatever. So I was like, okay, let me try Western Union. Western Union said it's going to take 5 to 6 days. And neither me nor the real estate agent wanted to sit around for 5 to 6 days on this deal, right? So I just kind of asked it out of the blue. I said, hey, can I pay in crypto? I was just like joking. And the real estate agent, she took it seriously. She's like, oh, crypto? Okay, yeah, I have a friend who's like in crypto. Calls him up. I paid in crypto. Within seconds, the money reaches. Within seconds, the money reaches in US dollars. So it's not volatile Guinea. Um, and I paid my rent. And that exact thing is happening, I'm telling you, around the Muslim world.
Hmm.
Um, that people are sending money in seconds to their family members back home, to different people across different countries, and all in a currency that doesn't destabilize. So that's, I think, if people want to understand crypto, that's one of the strongest use cases of crypto. And there's many other use cases. So it's not just the meme coins that you're seeing on TV. It's not the Trump coin. It's not all these coins. Those are just the ones that get attention in the West. But if you look at the actual numbers, the actual volume, the actual revenue, it's majority coming from real use cases like the one I mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's where people take it more serious, right? Where it's a real alternative.
Mhm.
Um, Especially, I think it's been used even in donations with Palestine, has it not?
Yes, yeah. So same thing in Gaza. It was extremely hard to get in money, um, and people are tracing money, right? So like I have both friends who are taking it in via crypto because it's very hard to trace and very hard for a PayPal or something to block. And then they give it directly to an aid organization. There's a very good brother who's also an investor in our company, Alhamdulillah. He goes on the ground um, to Jordan and like as far as he can get into Gaza, right? It's
Yeah,
very hard
yeah.
for him to get into Gaza, but he goes to Jordan, um, trying to come to Egypt and make sure this aid gets in to Gaza. And it's all enabled by crypto. So yeah,
And I think when people understand the financial scene, and I think the big thing a lot of people may have concerns with is, is it really possible, right? Is it kind of like a generational change possible? Because you're not talking with it's not like a company versus company, right? It's like real powers at interest, and there can be some repercussions with that. And how realistic is you know switching currencies? Because that's really I don't think it can
yeah,
happen without a war, right?
yeah. That's you bring up a great point, right? Which is uh, number one. I think the first point is actually just a powerful point that crypto is. It's not like other technologies in the sense that it's not just fighting a technological battle; it's fighting a ideological battle.
Right.
Um, and that's a big reason. Anytime people are fighting ideological battles, you're going to have a lot of pushback. You're going to have a lot of um, lies and manipulation. And I think Muslims know that best, right?
Right.
Um, there's an ideological battle against Islam. Uh, and because of that, there's so many lies and false narratives. um, and secret covert operations and all this kind of stuff against Muslims. Um, so it's the same thing in crypto. And so that battle has already been going on from day one, from the time that you saw, oh, Bitcoin's a scam back in 2011, 12, right? Um, and I grew up on that and I was like, oh yeah, Bitcoin's a scam. I don't believe it. But look where it is today. That's the biggest proof, right? Just
Yeah.
yesterday or 2 days ago, the White House, the the government of the strongest country physically in the world, says we are going to make a strategic Bitcoin reserve. It went from just some guy on the internet saying, I'm going to buy some pizza with some tokens, to saying that now the strongest country in the world is going to hold some crypto. And it's not just America, it's many countries around the world. And some of them are already beginning to adopt it as a currency. If you looked in El Salvador, El Salvador was one of the first countries to adopt it alongside other currencies.
Yeah, there's no doubt that, when US adopts it, there's a chain effect over the world. Uh,
Yeah,
Before we go on to another topic, I really wanted to ask you about pushback because,
yeah,
you know, I don't think it's quite. I mean, there's a lot of interests with when you talk about, the history of banking, right? And I think most Muslims are aware about it and how it is, and what central banks are and how much power they hold, right? It's not. Uh, it's
I
not
actually don't think most Muslims are aware, but yeah, go ahead. I think
I
most
think
Muslims have like almost zero idea. If you ask the everyday Muslim in the mosque, if you went to the mosque, maybe
maybe
a smart Muslim like yourself, mashallah,
I'm not.
maybe you're living in MCA, one of the smartest mosques in America. But I think if you go to like some mosque in Houston, Texas, where I grew up, and just be like, yeah, tell me about central banking and uh, how the government controls currency, they'd have no idea.
I'll concede. I agree. But I think when you talk about it on a philosophical level, right?
Hmm.
About
Yeah,
and people who are aware about it,
yeah,
it's not. It's very hard to conceive that you know, the powers that be in the world will just switch it like that. And another thing is, I think I saw it the past 2 weeks. There's this I think Muslim brother. He has a podcast on trading. His name is Iqbal, or I forgot his name. But there was a British economist called Gary Stevenson on
okay,
on his podcast, and he was mentioning that he was against the against Bitcoin as a whole because he just thought Satoshi Nakamoto was it just pumping up, but at a great scale, and it's just I remember hearing that, and I was like, it's really hard to kind of fathom with crypto at a foundational level because I think you're not given assurance that the people behind it are pure because it's anonymous. So there's these two things.
yes. The one thing being anonymity, and the other being uh, the government control.
Yeah, like they wouldn't give it up so easy.
I think, look, I'm not like they have this term in crypto, like called maximalism.
Yeah.
Um, so like you could be a crypto maxi, you can be a Bitcoin maximalist, you can be a whatever, pick your crypto, Solana maximalist. I'm not a maximalist, in the sense that I think it is a guarantee that any of this happens. The only guarantee for us Muslims is what Allah has told us and the Prophet ﷺ. Um, so I completely agree with you. These are actually very legitimate critiques. That there could be a breaking point that comes where crypto becomes big enough that the government is like, this is dangerous, and we must fight against this. And I think we came very close to that breaking point in America under the Biden administration. Um, and under the Trump administration, their strategy has kind of shifted. They are saying, hey, instead of trying to fight the tiger, let's ride the tiger, right? Um, and let's use it for our own benefit and power. And that's also nefarious in some sense, right? And it can shift the balance from what crypto is supposed to be, which is a decentralized financial system, to a very centralized one that has, the wrapping of a decentralized system. And what actually happens is the U.S. government reinforces the dollar hegemony and its financial hegemony and economic hegemony around the world, which is very problematic in many sense. And not just even from an Islamic standpoint, I think every government, of course, besides America, would agree that's problematic. So that is a very legitimate critique. And the second critique of anonymity, I think it goes into the Islamic philosophy as well of anonymity, right? Where I don't think we're kind of between the cyberpunk libertarian outlook of, no one should know what I'm doing, anarchist kind of outlook on one hand, and on the other hand, the very real world that we're living in, where the government can trace every single transaction that you're doing on your credit card or your bank account. If you look at the Muslim philosophy of anonymity, I'm not an expert in it, but there is a realm for privacy. I believe there was a story of Umar radiallahu anh who, when somebody was brought to him for a crime that he did in private, he said, "Why did you bring him? He did it in the confines of his own home." And he did it where no one was trying to look, right? So I believe it's Umar radiallahu anh or another righteous Khalifa. So there is that perspective where we're not supposed to be monitored about things that we're doing in our own home, whereas today we are. Everything we do on the internet, every transaction we do, every bank account transaction we do, we are monitored. So, and that has real far-reaching consequences to us, because we can't even send money to Gaza. We can't send money for a legitimate use case, a completely even legal use case, to Afghanistan without being cracked down, without being seen as some kind of, terrorist, whatever. I have a friend, his name is, I'll give him a shout out. His name is Muhammad Ali. Brilliant guy, mashallah. Brilliant, I should say, Sheikh himself. He's a very advanced student of knowledge and a teacher. Just because his name is Muhammad Ali, he cannot send money on PayPal, right? Or via bank account. And so he often has to use his wife's bank account just to send money. And this is just, again, just to like a friend in the UK or something.
Yeah.
So I think the degree to which we've given up our anonymity is too much. It doesn't align with Islamic values. The degree with our control and our privacy. Yeah,
I agree with I agree with, for example, the user, basically
Sure.
that they should have anonymity. I think what the critique is about the founders' anonymity, for example.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think, when you don't know who's behind a project, if it's like for example, a cult, you know who it is, right? But if you don't know, you sometimes have su'ad dhan, bad thoughts.
No, it's that, again, that's a legitimate critique. And I think there's a group of Muslims that are Bitcoin maximalists, right?
Right.
And they need to grapple with this critique, because especially with Bitcoin, you don't know who this person is. And it's the same critique, actually, one of my shuyukh, he said, like, I sat down with him, I asked, is Bitcoin halal, haram? And he said, look, Bitcoin is halal. After I walked it through with him, I was like, this is exactly what Bitcoin does. He said it's halal. But he said, you don't know who made this thing. Satoshi Nakamoto. Who's Satoshi Nakamoto? I don't know.
Yeah.
There's different people claiming they're Satoshi Nakamoto. Some white guy from Australia, some white guy from America, some Japanese guy. But no one knows who he is. He could, for all we know, for all intents and purposes, could be some government agency itself. And people will have counters to that. They say, oh, well, look, you can see everything on the chain. You can see everything in public. You can see who's moving money. You can see the code that controls the mining, the Bitcoin mining. So we've analyzed all that and we've understood it. And therefore, there's no harm. I still think that's not a completely valid defense of either Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana. And that's why I think it's in the Muslims' best interest to diversify, right? So I'm
So it's
not
just
saying
another it's just another means. That's kind of your perspective.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And I do think there are other means. Maybe some Muslim says, you know what, I'm going to try to bring back gold, the gold
Yeah.
standard. Tawfiq, inshallah,
Yeah.
Allah bless your efforts. Try to do that, like if you can, right? Maybe you have some connects with governments and you can try to influence some governments to bring this back. I think Muslims should pursue multiple different strategies and not just one strategy and put all your eggs in one basket.
I really appreciate it because I think this is a more practical approach, right? When instead of being, like you said, I don't know the lingo so well, like a maximalist, maybe you're a Bitcoin practicalist, or I don't know what
A practicalist. That's a great term. I like that. I'm gonna coin that. I think you
Yeah,
coined it. I'm gonna keep that. A practicalist.
alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
But it's more practical, right? You have different means and different things you can rely on, if you're talking about the real world, something alternative to, complete fiat money. Before we jump into uh, you know, inshallah, and kind of what your vision is as Muslims for the future, and we'll talk about adoption as well. Tell us a bit about yourself, I think we skipped over that. Tell us a bit
Yeah.
how you actually got into the scene and basically your path.
Yeah. I think, this scene of Islamic finance and crypto, it starts with my own journey in Islam. I think for a lot of Muslim builders, a lot of Muslim founders, especially if you're building the Islamic space, your journey of Islam is deeply intertwined with that, right? And for me, alhamdulillah, I had excellent parents. Shout out to them. May Allah bless them and have mercy on them. And they raised me as a good Muslim. But I think, like all people, you start to have doubts about your religion and you start to have doubts about your faith. And for me, a very pivotal moment in this I went to this program for Arabic. It's a now defunct program, or, you could say at least it's not as prominent in Dallas, Texas, which is Bayina. And I think that opened my eyes in two ways. One, it opened my eyes to the fact that this is a true religion. And second, I got to meet so many brilliant Muslims from so many different facets of life. And one of those brilliant Muslims happens to be my co-founder today, alhamdulillah. So we became really good friends from that time. And we became best friends. And he went off, maybe you should do a podcast with him as well, because very impressive brother, mashallah. But he actually dropped out, started his own company. He dropped out of Columbia, started his own company. But that taught me that, look, I think we're on the cusp of this generation that's going to build on their parents' work. It's going to build on their grandparents' work. And it's no longer just about like, hey, I'm going to build a mosque,
Yeah.
And I had two friends there already. One of them was this friend, my co-founder, Ammar. And the second, I'll also give him a shout out. His name is Wassim, Aziz al-Islam in New Jersey. they actually tried to start this Muslim accelerator back then.
Oh
They're like,
wow.
hey, we're going to start this accelerator for Muslim startups. This was
What
more
year
than
was
10
it?
years ago. This was 2013.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So they were just college kids, alhamdulillah. Um, but I was very inspired by that vision. Uh, and then I went out to school. I went out to uh, Stanford and I majored there in computer science. I was very focused on AI. And at that time, I had a lot of friends who were mining Bitcoin, um, who were because you get free electricity and free internet. That's a big thing about uh, Stanford startups is they would always leverage that. I'm sure you heard the stories of Google that they actually ran their first servers just out of different Stanford computers. So similarly, people were just mining Bitcoin out of different Stanford computers. Um, but I was very focused on AI because it's like, oh yeah, Bitcoin's a scam.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the way that intertwines is that both AI and crypto are generational technologies. But I think you have so many more Muslims focused on AI because no one is saying that AI is a scam. And there's no narrative against AI because it's not an ideological battle against the current order, right? AI is a very centralizing technology. If you look at the biggest companies in AI, OpenAI, uh, Anthropic, they're controlled and have big stakes from even bigger companies like Microsoft, Amazon. Um, and to do anything significant in AI, the power of the AI is held in the data. And who has the data? Big companies, governments, right? Um, so there's no narrative against AI because it's a very centralizing technology. So in any case, I'm just showing that as a lesson that I think more Muslims should also focus on crypto. I'm not saying completely abandon AI. There's many smart Muslims in AI, but also focus on crypto because it's actually a decentralizing technology. And then after school and within school, I started also studying Islam more seriously. And I started studying with Sheikh Rami Ansur at the Taiba Foundation, which is another brilliant organization, alhamdulillah. And then I went after school and I studied in Mauritania for some time. And then since then, I've been back and forth. I kind of juggle between studying in different countries and in Abu Dhabi and Egypt, um, and uh, and doing my startup and working at Google. I spent some time at Google. I was an engineer at YouTube, and then I did a couple startups before this current version of the startup. So that's the long story short. But yeah,
Inshallah, that's a very diverse diverse story.
alhamdulillah,
And inshallah, just like we have to diversify our means, you diversified your backgrounds and your story. Um,
alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
I think I'll take a pause there in terms of your Islamic background, right? As a Muslim, I think when you maybe culturally there's kind of a divide between studying the madrasa and going to the real world. And it's like, a person who studies, he's just the imam, the sheikh, and then the people who it's not very cohesive. And I think what you demonstrated maybe is that you apply yourself in the world with the proper backing, with the proper foundation, with the proper mindset. And I'd love you to tell your kind of mindset and outlook from an Islamic perspective, how that Islamic knowledge, I think, gave you the confidence or the perspective to look at the world. Because I don't think that you choosing to do a crypto startup, you wouldn't have done it, in my opinion, if you didn't have that Islamic knowledge.
Yes, yeah, I think it's extremely important. I think Islamic knowledge, and I'm just talking about. I'm not talking about going out and becoming a scholar, uh, because people think today that anytime you start studying Islamic knowledge, oh, you're going to go out and be a scholar. You're going to go out and be a sheikh, a sidi, a maulana,
Yeah,
whatever you want to call it, right? Um, but the knowledge that we're trying to grapple with today and we're trying to hold is simply what the scholars call the fard ain, the
Mm.
individual obligation. The individual obligation in knowing what we believe in, knowing what our purpose is, um, knowing our connection to Allah, knowing how to pray and fast, and how to deal and even deal in financial transactions.
Mm.
That's an individual obligation. Um, and people think these are disconnected, but in our tradition, they were never disconnected. They were never disconnected. Uh, Going back from the time of the Sahaba, you have Umar radiallahu anh, who said, who kicked out everyone in the marketplace who didn't know the rules, the fiqh of buying and selling. He kicked them all out. And this is just like any merchant in the marketplace. Didn't know the rules of buying and selling, get out. Um, that means they didn't study the fiqh of buyur, at least at a very basic level. They were kicked out. Um, and it's, again, not just in this financial realm. If you look at Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, and so many Muslims today look up to him because as one of the people who freed Quds, right? What did he mandate in his army? He actually mandated that people study a book on Aqidah, and I'm forgetting the name of the book, but I heard this from Sheikh Asrar Rashid, that everyone in his army had to study a book on Aqidah, right? Why is that? Because he knew that the victory of the Muslims is in their connection with Allah. And the connection with Allah is not sound unless they have the basic knowledge that the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, and the scholars after that came with. So I think that's how the two tied together. So any Muslim in business, any Muslim in anything, in law, in medicine, needs to have a basic level of knowledge, and they will go so much further in their career if they do have that.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and may Allah allow all of us to go upon that path.
I mean,
Was it one of the big factors for you to start the company, or were you like kind of like thinking about the world at a philosophical lens, or how was it?
yeah, certainly. I think there was a time when I was in Mauritania,
Yeah,
and it was very, Mauritania is an environment that's completely disconnected. And we were talking about that, right?
yeah,
You go to somewhere like Tuamarat. Tuamarat is Murabat al-Hajj, if you've heard, the audience has heard of these scholars. Um, there was a moment there where there are moments there you feel like you're in Tatooine, right? Tatooine in Star
oh, from
Wars,
Star
where,
Wars, yeah, yeah,
yes, like you see the big moon setting
yeah.
in the desert and there's no one there. Um, I had that feeling, right? There's like literally no one for miles. Uh, and I thought to myself, like, look, I could just actually uh, stay here. I didn't tell anyone from my family this, but so maybe my parents listen to this and be like, what? How can you say that? But um, I had that thought. It was like, I could just stay here for a few years, I could come out like I could try to be someone like Murabat,
Yeah.
Um, and, but then I thought, like, what is, like, every Muslim has a purpose. Every single Muslim has a purpose. Um, there's a reason that Allah put you and I here and in the circumstances and in the shoes that we have. And I thought the reason perhaps that Allah had given me this kind of unique combination of like, okay, I'm in Mauritania and I studied in Stanford. Uh, and I remember when I came back, the,
Mm.
the border agent was actually so confused. He's like, you studied CS in Stanford? You're going to go work in Google? And you were and you said you were in some mountain in Mauritania studying Islamic law? And like, he was like, what is the connection? Um, but there is a connection, and that connection is just the people who are building um, society, the people who are building, especially for Muslims, need to build it on the right foundations.
Mm.
And especially in finance, uh, so many Muslims are in a financially weak situation. Or even if they're financially strong, they don't have barakah in their money. And
Right, right.
the way to get barakah is through following the system that the Prophet ﷺ left for us. And that was a motivation for crypto. That was a motivation like, hey, I can come in and implement this system in crypto in a way that the world hasn't seen for 300, 400 years in modern finance.
Yeah, that's I think you said it perfectly, right? The combination and to use that, that it's like a Venn diagram, right? To use it in what your purpose is. You
Yeah.
mentioned you know, like uh, Islamic finance, right? And I think,
Mm-hmm.
as you go into adulthood, I think Muslims, you have to be aware of it because that's kind of that so-called alternative, right?
Mm-hmm.
We try to, whether it's with houses or anything you're exposed to, Islamic finance. Can you just give us a breakdown of how can crypto kind of change the scheme? You mentioned, Abu Dhabi is a new location. They've, what you said, 400 million in their reserves. I just think that in the MENA region specifically, they've been pushing crypto out more. And perhaps
Mm.
from your perspective, there's a lot of potential, especially for Muslims, and that's why you're so adamant on Muslims adopting it.
Yeah, there's an immense potential. And I would say the simplest potential is this. If you think that crypto has a 50% chance of being the new financial system, the new way finance runs. Okay, forget 50%, even 25%, even 10%. Okay? What is the valuation of the current financial system? It's, I don't know, something like
100 trillion, right?
100 trillion, 100 trillion.
Yeah.
Yeah? So 10% times 100 trillion, 10 trillion is the value of just getting into crypto early. $10 trillion. And all you have to do at the very basic level, it's kind of like how Allah blessed many Muslim countries with oil. All they had to do
Mm.
was dig the oil. Right?
Yeah.
In this sense, all you had to do for Muslim countries is buy the crypto. Like you don't need, at least that's the first stage, right? Just buy the crypto. Um, and then the second stage is developing the systems on top of it. So it's kind of a very hedged bet. And I would say same for the Muslims that are not living in Muslim countries, even if you don't think, oh, this thing about is it is it going to be a new financial system? Um, even if you think, oh, it's $4 trillion already, but yeah, it's still a scam. Do you think there's a 10% chance it could be the new financial system? Then you should be hedging your bet and putting that money in, right? Um, and this is something also you take from Islamic knowledge. Like so many people treat the world as what they say in Islamic knowledge is qat'i, meaning with certainty, right? Like crypto's scam, 100% scam. You
Yeah.
know, uh, I don't know, like the US government is done, 100% done. But you learn in in Islamic knowledge that most of Islamic knowledge itself, forget other knowledge, most of Islamic knowledge is not 100% certain. It is maybe 80, 90, 95% certain. Um, so what about worldly knowledge where you have no idea what's going to happen in 10 years?
Mm.
Um, so that's my appeal to like the crypto skeptics. If you think there's a 10% chance that this is the new financial revolution, uh, then Muslims should be at the front of that because the current financial revolution, we're at the back of it. So this is an opportunity to leapfrog to the future. That's my uh, pitch to Muslims in crypto for crypto.
So what's the alternative, right? Like, how do we combat this? What's the product? Inshallah, what does it do?
So inshallah is there's a long-term goal and a short-term goal, right? Let me start with the long-term. Every single asset that is managed in a traditional financial ecosystem will be managed on the blockchain. That is our bet, right? Again, you don't have to believe it 100%, but our bet is there's an 80, 90% chance it's going to happen. That includes oil, that includes even stocks, that includes wheat, that includes gold, that includes anything, even currencies. Many of those are already on the blockchain. So the dollar is on the blockchain. The euro is on the blockchain, and trillions of dollars are being moved. I would say at least hundreds of billions are being moved every single year. Okay? Stripe, which is the largest, one of the largest financial payments companies, knows this, and that's why they acquired a crypto company for $1 billion to move dollars on the blockchain, right? So smart people are making these bets, and that's why I want Muslims also to think about, like, if non-Muslim smart people are making these bets, Muslims should be thinking about making these bets too. So what Inshallah wants to do is build the rails to invest in these assets, buy these assets in halal ways. So it's a very simple example. In the modern financial ecosystem, the easiest way to hedge against inflation is what? Do you
like buy an asset,
guess?
right? Like
Sorry?
something that doesn't depreciate, like an asset, right?
And specifically what asset?
A house could be a good one, right?
Yes, it could be good, but it's not the
Oh,
easiest
gold,
way,
right?
man. And still not the easiest. Why? Because house is not easy because it's illiquid.
Yeah.
And just think about, like, let's say you wanted to go buy a house today in the Bay Area. What do you have to do? You have to go to Amin Housing, apply for
Yeah.
6 months, and then maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. Find a house. It's very complicated. Most people aren't going to do it. And that's just for your primary house. Amin Housing, I don't think, gives loans for secondary houses, like as a business.
Right.
Gold. What you're gonna go buy a bunch of gold and keep it in the bank. That's the best. I would say that's probably one of the best. But the easiest way today, in today's world, is to buy treasury bills, is to buy short-term government bonds. The easiest way. Why? Because it's the same thing as holding a dollar, except you also get a yield against it. You get 4 to 5%, depends on the interest rate, anywhere from like 3 to 6, 7%. And Muslims don't have access to that. So the Muslims don't have the easiest way to hedge against access to the easiest way to hedge against inflation in the world. That is a huge setback for us. Like a savings account. Actually, our savings account is one of the easiest ways to hedge against inflation. But you can't take
I didn't say
interest
that
from a
because
savings account.
that was interest.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about
In general. Yeah.
in general, right?
Yeah.
But Muslims don't have access to that.
Right.
So that's a very fundamental building block. So now we come to what we're doing today. The easiest way to hedge against inflation in the crypto financial ecosystem is staking. Because inflation does happen. It's a very controlled inflation. And we can delve into that because I know Bitcoin maximalists attacked that point that, Ethereum, Solana, they have inflation. It's very controlled. And Islam is not against inflation. Even gold has slight controlled inflation, right? But the easiest way to hedge against that is by staking. And so that's what we're doing first, is we're building a staking system, and we've already built it, but we're expanding it, that allows you to hedge against inflation in this new financial ecosystem in a way that's halal and riba-free.
Inshallah. So let's dive into staking a little, because I don't think, you said not that many Muslims know about central banks. I think even less of them know about staking. How does it work?
So
I
I
before
think,
you
yeah,
answer, I think
yeah,
I was reading on your website. I think you guys
mm,
have some good like I think you guys have the white paper and
mm.
if I'm not mistaken, like something that kind of portrays the knowledge. But from your words, how can you briefly describe it?
Yeah. Um, so let's start with the blockchain itself, right? What is the blockchain? The blockchain is a bunch of different computers around the world versus the way the current financial system works is there's, you could say, one computer. It's sitting in uh, the U.S. government, and that controls, how much dollars there are and which banks get access to these dollars. Um, and again, I'm just dumbing this down a lot. So for anyone who's an expert in this, you don't need to harp on the details. But um, the blockchain says, okay, instead of having one bank that sits in the U.S. government, have one computer that sits in the U.S. government, have 1,000 computers, 5,000 computers all over the world. And theoretically, anyone should be able to run this computer. Now what happens is all the financial programs, or you could say the banks, or whatever, like the Wall Street in crypto, is running on these computers all over the world.
Mm,
And they pay a fee, these programs, these hedge funds, these whatever banks, these exchanges, they pay a fee to these computers to use the computers. Okay. So I hope you're following me so far. I know it's very complicated, but summary, blockchain, bunch of different computers. The programs on the blockchain pay a fee to these computers. An example of a program, one of the biggest programs, is USDC, or USDT, which a lot of Muslims use all over the world, which is a currency that's pegged to the dollar. Um, and it's basically a dollar on the blockchain. So that's an example of the program. So anytime this program runs on these computers, they have to pay a slight fee.
mm,
So what does staking do? Staking says, okay, uh, anyone can earn this fee by giving capital, by investing in these computers. So you became like a partner in these computers. It's like investing in I don't want to say McDonald's franchise because we don't eat McDonald's anymore, but investing in a falafel corner, right?
yeah.
Falafel corner in the Bay Area, it's like a Muslim burger franchise. Alhamdulillah. So by investing, you can invest in your own falafel corner and you earn a percentage of all the profits of falafel corner. Similarly, staking says you can invest in a percentage. You can invest in these computers, earn a percentage of all the fees earned by this computer. Now, here's the issue. Just like any global financial trade commerce system, a lot of the people using it are non-Muslims, and a lot of the programs running on it are riba based. They are interest-based loans. They are leverage. They are gambling. Um, and if you earn profit from that, that's problematic.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't need to issue a fatwa in this podcast, but we can say it's very I think any Muslim can understand you're earning money from riba. That's problematic. Um, so what we do is we run computers that filter out this profit from riba. And because we've optimized these computers in such a way, your the profit that you earn is as good as it would be from a haram source.
Yeah, I think you broke it down right. There's so many ways we can go off of this, but I think the biggest thing is I think I see how this can be a solution for example, Muslims who are already in the crypto world. They would be able to understand
Mm.
this. The big problem I think is the TAM, right? The total addressable market is
Yeah,
um
yeah, yeah,
how do you get more Muslims into crypto to adopt this? And I think this is maybe the biggest issue. I see a lot on Twitter, a lot of, these Bitcoin Muslims, they're very adamant about it. And it's
yeah.
like always a megaphone, right? But how? to accelerate market adoption? That it's
Yeah.
like the biggest question of Muslim crypto.
First thing I would say is I wouldn't underestimate how much Muslim wealth is already in crypto. Our estimate for how
It
much
can always
Muslim
be
wealth
more,
is
right?
already in, it can always be more, but I would say it might be surprising to people. I would say there's at least $25 billion of wealth, Muslim wealth, in Ethereum and Solana
Mm,
alone. And to give you a very concrete on the ground example, I, you know, I went to one community, one Muslim gathering in Boulder, Colorado,
mm,
because my wife is from there. And we had one Muslim gathering. It was not even the entire community of Boulder, Colorado. It was just one Muslim gathering. I met 3 people there at that time. This was a year ago, with 32 Ethereum.
oh wow.
And that at that time and was almost $100,000. Okay, 3 people, 3 uncles, and you wouldn't know that there's uncles that come to the masjid, just like chilling. No one knows them. I mean, in the sense that like they're not some very well-known people for holding crypto. No one knows they're holding crypto. Um, but 3 of them in one tiny community. So I think there's a lot of these people that around the country, in the American Muslim community, around the world, but people just don't know that they're like, oh, I'm holding crypto. Now, to come to your question, like, how do we get more people into this? It's very clear. Like, I think the next step for us is to move to something that people understand.
Mm,
So we're going to give a return to dollars in a halal way. You're going to earn, you can put dollars in our app, which is coming soon, inshallah.
inshallah.
You just connect to your bank account. Yeah, inshallah. You can connect your bank account. You can connect your exchange or crypto exchange. Deposit just dollars from your account, and you will earn a fully halal yield that's not treasury riba based interest yield. And I think that's massive. Like, which Muslim does not want to earn hedge against inflation uh, in a very low risk way? And that's what we're going to provide.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that, inshallah.
Yeah.
I wanted to press more on the marketing aspect. I was looking at you guys, and I think you guys partner up with some muftis in terms of like ensuring the halalness and or providing validity. And
Mm-hmm.
also when you look in terms of like the crypto scene, you see, I think a lot of Muslims espousing the need to return to crypto. Like I think Saifuddin, he wrote the good book on the Bitcoin standard, and
Yeah.
you have, for
Yeah.
example,
Legend.
Sheikh Faraz in UK, who's an expert in
54 hours,
Islam.
Adam.
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 MashaAllah.
and there are people who have the knowledge, and once the person has the knowledge, they become extremely passionate about relaying it to others. I remember
Yes.
I met this person in October, and he was telling me all about you guys and a lot of passion, mashallah. But
Who was
I
it? Do you remember?
yeah, his name was Salah. He's from Texas. He's a good brother.
Oh, mashallah. Yeah. 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 I know him from Twitter. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mashallah.
and and I think like when you look at it from a marketing aspect and a community, like in terms of changing the community environment, is it more of um Saifuddin wrote a book, you have muftis talking about it on the YouTube channel, you have figures like yourself in the business industry constructing platforms or solutions. Is it more of this, or do you think maybe, for example, you need other marketing strategies? I'm sure like governments like UAE, and I don't know about Saudi, but they're already incorporating it. But what can accelerate it even faster?
Yeah. I would say actually, like, we don't need to accelerate it faster.
You're a
um,
patient guy,
yeah, yeah, I'm patient. In Allah ma'as sabirin, right?
inshallah. Yeah.
Um, but it's the interesting thing about crypto, interesting dynamic is that you can see the adoption is perfectly aligned I wouldn't say perfect because nothing is perfect, but it is almost uh, very beautifully aligned um, with where people should adopt it.
Mm.
Okay, what do I mean by that? Who were the first people to adopt Bitcoin?
The nerds,
It
right?
was some, yeah, it was some like not even that I was count myself as a nerd. It was like the crazy, weird geek cyberpunk nerds, sitting in some basement with their hoodie on, uh, maybe in the part-time job running Anonymous, and these are the people that adopted Bitcoin first, and they got Bitcoin when it was like $10. Then you had people who were kind of like super nerds, but they weren't, like these people sitting with their hoodie on. And mashallah, I know some of them. I know a brother. He's in the Bay Area, very humble, um, uh, very good brother, mashallah. And we're blessed to count him as an investor as well. He got into Bitcoin when it was $100.
Wow.
He's a genius at AI. And he said he saw an email going around at Google about Bitcoin. And he said, "What's this?" And he researched it a bit. And he's like, "Okay, this is really interesting." He's going to put $100. He put $10,000, I believe, at $100 of Bitcoin a piece.
He's okay with you
um,
saying this?
well, I haven't identified who he is,
Okay,
but
okay.
Alhamdulillah, he's doing well. And I mean, he's a genius brother himself, and he knows who he is, and people who know him know who he is. Uh, but those are the people, and those people deserve to get in early because they
Yeah.
did the research and they took a highly leveraged bet, not a haram bet for people who think maybe it's like, why is he talking about betting? I'm just talking about, you know, making a purchase early,
An
right?
investment, right? Yeah.
An investment, yeah. Um, and you see over time, crypto has had boom and bust cycles. And uh, when the risk appetite matches the price, that's when a person gets in, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So somebody who's very risky, they got in early. Somebody who's less risky, they're getting in now. Um, and now who's getting in is literally the governments, right? And I would say that's very low risk. So um, if a government can get in, uh, I would hope. And the only people I want to get in faster are Muslims, right? That's my
Yeah.
focus. I'm like, you need to get it. Like literally, the U.S. government is saying they're going to hold the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and you're not going to hold Bitcoin. Like, come on, right? Um, I honestly don't think the only possible thing is like door to door education, mosque to mosque education, and we were trying to do that a year ago. We just don't have the manpower to do it now. But I hope that people, every evangelist a in their community, right, will stand up and do that, inshallah. Like Salah, like uh, you, inshallah, Wassim. If you become an evangelist, I'm not sure where you are in that boat.
I'm just an interviewer right now.
Alhamdulillah. Okay.
N- No, alhamdulillah. I think, like you said, it's an unnatural graph, right? And I think, like you said, when the government gets into it, I think to a common person, it's seen as a validator or a sign of something real. And it's just interesting, I think, from if you take a step back about, and look at crypto as a whole and how it will be in the next couple of years, because, it's so tied to geopolitics now, right? You have, the past 2 years, very like crazy, and, you know, payment is such a necessary thing because transport stuff. And then you have, governments getting into it. And do you think, for example, like it's going to accelerate at a high rate? And like just about general insights, what's your like kind of prediction about, for example, whether MENA countries they're going to get more into it, or like now that the US announced this week it's going to be a ripple effect?
Are you trying to time your investment?
Uh,
I'm just kidding.
there's nothing wrong
No,
with that.
Alhamdulillah. Um, Yeah, there definitely will be a ripple effect, but uh, it'll definitely be a ripple. It's only if you look at Bitcoin, and my father-in-law asked this like maybe about a month ago when crypto was crashing a bit. He's like, "Why is it crashing?" I think my mom as well. You know, I got her into some crypto as well, and she's like, "Why is it crashing?" You know, I said, "Look, it's crashing now, but look at the graph in the past 10 years.
Mm.
It is it is actually the fastest growing asset class in the world. Faster than real estate, faster than gold, faster than stocks, faster than anything. Um, so I think that's what Muslims should keep their focus on, right? Like, forget about the short term. Tomorrow, it could crash. I just want to tell you that. Like, I want to vaccinate you, right? I want to vaccinate the
Yeah.
Muslims. Like, be ready. Tomorrow could crash. Tomorrow, Donald Trump could say, you know what? Actually, never mind. We're not doing the Bitcoin strategic reserve. Or Congress could say this is unconstitutional or blocking this. Um, Supreme Court could say that. And then some other country announces, actually, you know what? Because the US is not doing it, Abu Dhabi says, you know, we're going to sell some of our Bitcoin. We're going to sell all of our Bitcoin. But look at the past 10, 15 years and make a strategic long-term bet. Um, a strategic long-term bet. And I think that's where Muslims struggle with, right? Is making strategic long-term bets, at least in the past, since I would say since maybe the 1700s, the Ottomans, you know, since then, it's very hard to see strategic long-term bets, except, you know, individual cases. Um, but when it comes to technology, uh, it's almost frustrating to an extent. And I'm sure other Muslim technologists can agree with this, like uh, how we just don't make strategic long-term bets. We're just very content on both the individual and country level on just like saying, hey, we're gonna, you know, I don't know, just like live with our oil money.
Like
And
being a
now you see people,
consumer, not a.
yeah, exactly being a consumer,
Mm.
exactly. And this frustration, by the way, is not new at all. Uh, to give you a historical example, there was a someone by the name of Ibn Ghanim al-Andalusi.
Mm.
Um, and he was born uh, in Spain, this after the fall of Andalus. But,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
Muslims stayed there for a long time after the fall of Andalus. He was born in the late 1500s, early 1600s. And he actually served in the Spanish Armada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he actually served under Spain.
Yeah.
Um, and he quickly became a master uh, at cannons and artillery because at that time Spain was the world superpower, right?
Right.
Um, but then, of course, there was a crackdown on Muslims again, and he left.
Mm.
He settled in Tunisia. And what was interesting, and I think at that time already Tunisia was under Ottoman. It was kind of like an Ottoman vassal state, and so they had artillery. Artillery. I can't say that word properly, but they just didn't know how to use it. Like they were. He said he was so frustrated by how incompetent they were in using it. He actually wrote this entire book, first in Spanish, then it was translated to uh, Arabic, like basically telling them like, please learn how to use this technology. It's important for the future. Um, and like just in complete frustration. So this frustration is not new. I think it's something that's plagued the Muslim Ummah, not forever, but for the past 200, 300 years. But we of making strategic long-term bets, right? Um, so my plea in crypto, in terms of where crypto is going, in terms of price, I don't know. Tomorrow it could crash. I don't want to tell you anything, but in terms of the long term, look at the past 15 years and start making a strategic long term bet. And uh, you know, even if it's very risk managed, wherever for everyone's personal portfolio, or in terms of building for everyone's personal time.
Yeah, I think the point you made about how the necessity of building for the future is really underspoken about, especially about how I was talking with a brother Arshan, he's a good brother, about how he was saying how the Muslims are more of a consumers than builders. And I think there's a potential and tides are changing, but in the past, let's say post-colonialism, right? Definitely, you know, we adopt something rather than create. And from your perspective, you mentioned that I think, when you're in Stanford or you're studying, there's these two, generational technologies. You have crypto and AI. And I do think I see a lot of Muslim builders and founders in AI. Um,
Mhm.
but in terms of crypto, I don't see, like you said, that much. And I would just love it as an insight for someone who's interested about whether what can they build. For example, for
Mhm.
AI, it's like, okay, you can build like a SaaS thing, but it's just on AI. Or for example,
Yeah.
you can there's things to build. But for crypto,
A,
because
a
people,
wrapper around ChatGPT.
yeah, you can build a
Another
there,
thin wrapper around ChatGPT.
there's a lot of it's like a unlimited things to build. But with crypto, it's seen like, how do you build currency? That's what people first think. They don't think about the tools. So what are like the opportunities there in the market so that Muslims are the ones to build it?
That's an excellent question. I would say overall, AI is a, excuse me, AI is a more uh, mature industry. Because think about, when did AI start? It actually started in the 50s and 60s. People don't know that. But the first AI models were thought about in the 50s and 60s, and even theorized. Um, and then, my uncle himself, he's works at Amazon today, but he
Mm,
said in the 1980s, he did his master's thesis on AI.
mm,
1980, early 1980s, he did his master's thesis on AI. Um, so AI is a mature technology, right? And for that reason, um, it's there's a lot more greenfield opportunity to build in it. So I will acknowledge that. But because it's also a more mature technology, you're fighting a much more uphill battle, right? Like
right.
how many Muslim Sam Altmans are there? Uh, Zero,
Yeah.
maybe one.
Yeah.
I know there's a brother Imad Mustaq. Um,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and maybe he's one. So, um, but in crypto, it's very early. So like if you build today, you could be the the Sam Altman of the future in crypto as Muslim Sam Altman. Um, in terms of what opportunities there are, there's a lot, and I think the biggest opportunities are right now in stable coins, uh,
Mm,
especially if you're talking about real world things to do. So Muslims are some of the biggest users of stablecoins all over Africa, all over Asia. Um, but right now, number one, there's no stablecoin that is yield bearing. Okay, um, that is halal yield bearing stablecoin.
oh, okay.
Do I need to explain what stablecoin is? Stablecoin is basically a coin, a token that's pegged to the US dollar. Um,
Right.
and Muslims are using it all over Egypt. I can tell you in Egypt, there's even ATMs that accept stablecoins. Um, there's Uber drivers that will accept stablecoins. But these US dollars are held by a company called Tether, um, and they earn all the yield on it.
Mm,
Okay, and so they're literally the most profitable company per employee in the world.
oh,
They ha-
wow.
they make around $12 billion in profit per quarter. I think it's like 6 to 12 billion, and they have maybe 100 employees, maybe 200 max. There's no company like that in the world in any sector, right? So there's a massive opportunity for Muslims to do something like this, but give back the yield to people,
Mm.
right? Uh, Allow anyone who holds a stablecoin to earn some yield. Number one. Um, Even just make the payment rails for the stablecoins themselves. So Stripe themselves have integrated payment rails for stablecoins. But like if a merchant integrates stablecoin payments into their website, make the rails for that. Like, how does a merchant do that? I know two good Muslims actually working on that. One of them is an alliance. His name is Hanafi. I actually met him here in Cairo.
His name is
Um,
Hanafi, or he is?
yeah, that's the funny thing. His name is Hanafi, but he's from Algeria, so I'm guessing he's
Oh,
Maliki.
mashallah.
um, I actually thought that too. His Twitter handle was Hanafi, like his Twitter handle is like Hanafi. I was like, man, mashallah, that's a proud Hanafi right there,
Yeah, yeah.
And then I met him. He's like, no, 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 my name is Hanafi. Um, and there's a brother Atiq as well. He's from Somalia/New York, and he's doing something in this. So stablecoins is a massive opportunity. Just go to Alliance. If you look at Alliance DAO is the accelerator I'm part of, and here's a shout out to them because they're amazing as well. If you go to the Alliance request for startups page, so many ideas, so many ideas. Just go build one of them, right? And if you're smart, you can probably get into Alliance as well. We'll
Yeah, I
help you.
think I was looking at that as well, and it's a beautiful place from what I've heard. Alliance, I've heard good things about it, and it's just I've talked to some other brothers as well. They were also talking about doing like the physical, for example, the physical infrastructure of crypto, like the just I forgot what was it called, like ledgers or what is it called again? The
Physical wallets,
Yeah, physical
hard
wallet.
wallets, cold wallets. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, inshallah, there's opportunity, and inshallah, Muslims take this advice. They heed it, and they're the first ones to build it. And alhamdulillah, I'm personally really optimistic, and I can see from your smile,
Likewise.
you're optimistic as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Now, there's a bunch of smart builders. I got the chance to know them, and it's definitely increasing. Maybe you saw my tweet the other day, but I definitely see Muslims. And the cool thing about crypto is it's all over the world. So just last week, I talked to Muslims in Turkey and
Mm.
then a brother in Nigeria, and they're all like, we saw your project, and some of them are smart Muslims, have been in crypto for a while, but they're like, yeah, we never thought about like how do we combine Islamic finance and crypto, and just seeing what we built sparked something in them, and they're like, now we're thinking about it. So it's very inspiring to see. I'm very excited, honestly, personally, for the next 5 years in crypto. That's my time horizon.
Yeah, inshallah, inshallah. Before we commence, why do you name it inshallah?
Inshallah, yeah, we actually have two reactions to that. One is like, wow, that's an amazing name. Love it.
Yeah,
And the other reaction is like, brother, I think you should change that name.
yeah,
It's don't take Allah's name for granted.
yeah.
Um, so I can see that. I mean, even it has some merit, even Islamically speaking. But the reason I'm still excited by the name is, number one, in crypto, everyone says inshallah. Everyone.
Uh, yeah. Even the
And it's
non-Muslims
kind of
sometimes.
all the time. The non-Muslims
Yeah,
say it all the time. Even
yeah,
Islamophobic, you see some anti-Islam crypto people, they say inshallah.
yeah,
um, because it kind of seeped in, I would say, from gamer culture,
yeah,
where inshallah is like hopeful, you know? Um, it's like you hope something happens. You're praying something happens. Some of the people who play FIFA, my cousin taught me this because I stopped playing FIFA, but he said there's actually a move that was called cross and say inshallah, right? Um, you just like lob up the cross and say inshallah like you're praying, right?
yeah.
So I think in crypto people say price go up inshallah, right? Like they're praying for the price to go up. So we want Muslims uh, to control the narrative around this name, um, and I think we want it to portray, yes, you're praying, but you're praying to someone, you're praying to Allah, right?
Of
Um,
course, yeah.
So turn to Allah and then say inshallah. Yeah. Yeah.
Inshallah. What a what a beautiful way to end the podcast. Inshallah,
Alhamdulillah.
Tariq, it was a pleasure having you on, and inshallah, I can't stop saying it, but there's you have all the
See you.
best and barakah in the future.
Barakallahu feekum. It was an honor being here, and I'm very excited for what you guys are doing on the Muslim Founders podcast. And inshallah, jazakallah khair. Thank you for having me.
Is the what yeah.